Hey, it's Eric G. Around the House is sponsored by Baldwin Hardware. For 75 years, Baldwin Hardware has been known for its first-class quality and craftsmanship in door and cabinetry hardware. As an alumnus of the Baldwin Hardware Design Council, I can say I have seen the details and quality from design to the finished product. If you're looking for a new style and old-world craftsmanship, I can tell you there is only one Baldwin Hardware. Check out what would look great in your home at baldwinhardware.com.
It's Around the House.
Oh, we laugh all the time. So my interior designer, Julie Molesky, we always laugh because we feel like we're the old ornery Muppets that goes on the balcony just critiquing the heck out of everything, because we'll go for a drive to go visit a new client and it's like 8 houses will pass by that are under construction. Like, can't believe we're doing that. Like, why? And she is a designer. She sees things different than I do. I see things as a builder. She sees them as a designer. And it's
when it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is a lot to know, but we've got you covered. This is Around the House.
Welcome to Around the House Show. This is where we talk everything about your home every single week. Thanks for joining us today. I don't know why this is the first time he's being on the show, but Matt Whitbeck Construction, welcome to Around the House, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
This is great, man. I mean, you and I go way back from sharing stages to even watching you film those Lowe's commercial pieces, that were those education pieces with my buddy Ty.
Yeah. Has a good hookup. Ty's awesome. Got to come out and see you guys on the West Coast and do a little bit of touring out there. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. And then, geesh, got to see your mug on the TV all this last year with you being the official contractor for This Old House project.
Yeah, we get to do season 43 with This Old House, Saratoga Springs, which was really neat because I grew up watching This Old House, lived on the end of a dead-end road in the middle of nowhere, and we had the funky, crazy, giant antenna. So we had 4 stations, and one of them was PBS, and that was the jam, man. I loved it.
Dude, same. I think I would not be doing what I'm doing without that show. And I've awkwardly told Kevin and everybody else on that show the same thing because they're, one, it's just real. It's just so real. And, it's honest, which I love. What was the experience for you going through that, man? Let's dive into that because that's got to be some hoops to jump through to begin with.
Yeah. So a little bit of filming experience, doing a little of this and that. I did do a couple commercials and some, video work with a YouTube series with Lowe's called Building Science, which was really cool. So I had at least a little bit of experience with working on camera. But I didn't know what to expect because I've seen some various things between doing a simple, small YouTube show to doing some commercials. You see various things between audio and video. I did work with one professional actor doing some commercials, which was really neat to later on turn on a television and see him on an actual movie. And I'm like, holy cow, I know that guy. So
cool.
I mean, you don't quite know what to expect when you get into something that's supposed to be reality TV because you hear all kinds of crazy stuff about what's scripted, what isn't. And one of the heads of the film group, when we were doing the Lowe's stuff, he does a whole bunch of reality TV stuff, like one of the race car shows that's on.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was giving me some of that stuff, telling me about what happened. So I didn't know what to expect. And when I got into it, like you said, it's real. It's actually happening. We're building the house. They're coming in. It's a lot of, the various professional members of their staff coming in to do interviews with all of our trade partners. And it was great. It was refreshing to find out that what I hoped and thought it might be was as authentic as it really was.
Yeah, it's funny. Growing up, I always thought the show was different, but now that I've, been in this industry for about 30 years now, I start to think of it different as it's not This Old House building a house. They're coming on, for instance, to Whitbeck Construction and almost reporting on the progress. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is pretty accurate. I mean, Tom Silva owns a contracting company with his brother. So they do a lot of contracting for this old house. So there is a bit of it where it's kind of like a lot of the members of this old house are working on a house. So they work on projects kind of exclusively. Well, I shouldn't say exclusively, but a lot of the projects they work on are being filmed for this old house in some capacity, if it's Ask or this old house, or, even for like small clips. But when they come on, they're kind of acting more in the reporting aspect of things. So they come on and they're sort of interviewing people. And a lot of what they do, and I love this about what they do, is they're really trying to shed a good light on the professional contractors, what their real day-to-day grind is, and the things that they're bringing to the table that are important or interesting, that most people wouldn't get that kind of behind-the-scenes view if they didn't have that show of seeing how these contractors are putting things together. So they pay a really great homage to the everyday subcontractor and builder.
That's great. And those guys just, it's interesting because, they come on the show, they know the challenges, but for me, even with my experience, your experience, there's always something I get out of that show every time I watch it going, oh, that's interesting. We don't do it that way out here, or whatever it is. Yeah. And that's the fun part with that.
Yeah, it is. It's nice. And those guys, because they do all of those things, and, you and I have both worked with guys like Kevin Ireton. So, Kevin being the editor of Fine Home Building for decades, they get to interview so many people. So they have just this amazing encyclopedia just full of interesting tricks that we don't get to see when we're kind of ingrained in our own local color, So that's one of the awesome parts about them touring around the country and just really trying to pay a great light on what's happening out there and what people are going through, because we don't all do it the same way, but we're not all dealing with the same environment. We're building habitat for human beings, but it's in different environments. So.
Absolutely. And Kevin, geez, what just a wealth of knowledge. And that's one of the things looking back, and I'm not really doing the stage much anymore just because this media thing's kind of been keeping me 100%. But man, some of the stuff I learned by just watching and listening to everybody from their different perspectives, with all the different people, whether it's you, whether it's Walt, whether it's Kevin, that whole group and many more. Just such a great brain trust. And it's so fun, like you mentioned, because something that you do up there in Saratoga, New York, and something I do in Portland, Oregon, maybe we have the general idea, but so many times it's done a different way just because of climate, construction, or even materials that we're using that are different.
Yeah. Things that we're just accustomed to, is it a jack or a trimmer? Great question, right? Like what are we putting in there? Is it worm drive or direct drive? There's certain things, guys, just you move around the country, and that's just a staple thing. It's like PBR or Budweiser or something. People just have what they're used to, and that's the thing where you are, and everybody's just accustomed to it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that people aren't doing something that's super similar or using slightly different vernacular for what it is. At the end of the day, we're not really reinventing much. Building's been happening for so long. We're just trying to come up with creative ways to do it and kind of do it economically for people. And that's really what's important, I guess, right?
Yeah. And, climate's part of it too. Like you were talking about, for instance, my neighbor's got a big water line leak right now in front of his house. It's running down my driveway. They're going to be digging that up here soon, but I got to put it at 18 inches underground here because of our climate.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be doing that up in your area.
No, if you can see behind me here,
I see some white out there.
We got snow already, and it's sticking. It's not melting. But where I am, it's kind of funny because a short commute away, I drive like 8-9 minutes down the mountain, and there's no snow. So that's kind of the funny part about where we are. Not too much different from where you are in Portland, right? You drive up the mountain, snow. Driving to Portland, you're in the Bay, and things are different.
Exactly. And all of a sudden I'm out at the coast, where it rarely freezes out there. So same kind of thing. What did you learn? What was the challenges of this old house? What a great group of people, and you had all the filming, but you're still building a massive remodel on a house with an addition and everything else. What are the challenges of you have challenges doing that on a normal day just from it's remodeling, right?
Yeah.
Now you're going to throw a very experienced film crew on it and the way they have to do it, because TV schedules, man, they're a dog.
Yeah, it makes stuff really tough. And I mean, to boot, we're in COVID. So, yeah. I mean, like, you deal with supply chain issues, and you almost, you make a great schedule, and you try to fluff a whole lot of incidental room in there. And then by the time you've revisited it like the fourth time, you're like, why do I waste time doing this? Yeah. I don't know. So it's been interesting the last couple of years for that reason. You never know what's going to come up missing. You never know what part's going to come. You never know if you're going to wait, 18 weeks to get something, and it comes and looks like Ace Ventura delivered it and just drug it down the street. It's bad sometimes. So we try to stay out in front of things. I did read something kind of funny recently by the architect who designed that house, where he talks about the Saratoga area, and it's one of the oldest inhabited cities in the U.S. anyways. I mean, because it's on that Hudson River chain. So when we think about like early development of the U.S. and the Hudson River being part of that trade route, we're predating French and Indian War, all that stuff. But he says, we got some really beautiful houses, and the trim was really well thought of, and nobody thought about the framing. It's just like they just kind of pieced it together. And I spent the beginning of my career as a framer. All we did was high-end luxury homes, and I really had a great knack for it, and I loved it. But then at the end of the day, I take apart some of these old houses. And what's funny is you always hear people say they don't build them like they used to, and I say, thank God.
Thank God, right?
We'd all be sitting in a pile of rubble with the new style of construction. Somebody throw a granite countertop on an island in some of these houses. And
where to go?
We'd have the scene from the Money Pit, right? On the floor. But, stuff like that,
Yeah. It's funny. I get into so many arguments on social media sometimes, and some of like the old house groups and stuff, because people are like, oh, they sure don't build them like they used to. And I'm like, like you are. It's like, they had some wonderful building materials, and they dealt with what they had, but there was no engineer involved in the process. Many times there were not drawings. There was not a load calculation. If they got the concrete right, they got it good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here we don't even have a lot of concrete here. So a lot of stacked stone foundations and going, 4, 5, 6, 8 feet into the ground. And you never know the soil content you're dealing with. That was one of the fun issues with that house. We assumed that there was more foundation under it, and we started excavating, and they just tapered the foundation from like 6 feet to nothing over 20 feet. So when we started peeling it back to figure out where our footing base was, we realized
there wasn't one.
Yeah, it was like 4 inches in the ground. So, and it was holding up the whole back of the house. So that's some of the funny stuff about that. I mean, did those houses last? Yes. Did they move around a lot? Yes. Would you want to put tile on the floor of like the back entryway? No, absolutely not. You would start with a normal formatted tile and end up with mosaics in a few years. So,
exactly. Exactly.
That's it. And the guys did have great material. They had old growth material. The lumber was abundant. It was all locally sourced. So, I mean, that's an amazing thing. And you had more craftsmen. So you had a huge, huge amount of labor force to pick from, people that did the work and knew how to work with their hands. And most homeowners knew how to work with their hands. And that's, very different from right now. So,
yeah. It's funny. My little lake neighborhood that I'm in here, we had it was one of the first big iron mills here, where they would create iron for the railroad coming out west. And this lake was a vacation lake for the people of Portland. And so all of the homes that were built back prior to 1940 were lake homes traditionally. So they were just that cabin-esque thing. Had no intention of really heating that thing. It was a summer home. And much like some of the older stuff of, 100 or 200 or plus years before, same plan of there was no intention of today's technology to go into that. And remodeling comes up that same way, where it was built on piers and things like that. It was just meant to be a cabin.
Yeah, that's a lot of how Saratoga was built, because originally it was a close destination from New York City, from Boston. You're a couple hours in both directions. So you look at, the Connecticut area, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, where you had a lot of industry with the steel. People came up here because it was a carriage ride. It was a railroad ride that in a few hours you could be at that resort town where there's horse racing, but they were all homes that people spent the summer in. So it was only a small community of people that lived here year round. So we have a lot of these really big estate style homes that people came up with, maybe their race horses, or they came up to just enjoy that summer life, get out of a little bit of the city grind and the heat, and enjoy a different climate and the cleaner water. And they didn't do that. They didn't put heat in. And then, we get into that heating era, and people just took already modest framing and hacked it apart to, put the coal furnace in and everything else. And boy, I'll tell you, when you peel some of the lath and plaster back, you're a little nervous, because you realize that the lath and plaster was probably holding 60% of it together.
Well, again, 100 years ago, the plumber got in there and just started hacking stuff up too. So when they threw plumbing in or whatever, it was just kind of what it was.
Yeah. I think people were so excited to just have indoor plumbing. They never it was like, yeah, this is great. Big deal. We'll cut this joist apart. But yeah, it's interesting.
That's awesome. I mean, it's funny. I got to ask you, what were some of the challenges you had outside of the stuff? Were there anything that you were like, oh man, this is tough with TV? Was there anything that threw into your schedule, the TV thing? Did you have to delay stuff for shooting? And I assume you had to have a little bit of that give and take.
So those guys are great. I mean, we did have to, walk away from a couple ideas that we all had for what was going to be filmed, and it had to do with schedule. So could we put the right people up there at the right time? Could their people come in? How did it work with the schedule? Did we have the right materials in? But ultimately, they're very accommodating. They're trying to work with our schedule, and really put people on the site that are going to be in the best interest of that time and place. So if we have a really interesting thing coming up with HVAC or electrical, they want to put the right people up there so that the Q&A and the interview process really sounds correct over television. So not any real big hurdles with that. It's TV, so it's a little bit slower going to do second shoots and retakes and close-ups and things like that to make sure that the audience gets good view of things. And there's that behind the scenes stuff that people just don't understand, maybe if they've never seen it done or haven't participated in it in some way. But other than that, the guys are always there to be respectful. And I think that's what's great about the This Old House crew, as these are primarily, I would say 99% of the people on staff have either spent long enough on construction sites, and even if it's the AV guys or whatever, they know what's happening. So they understand and appreciate the effort of work that goes into getting them on site. And they'll almost jump through hoops to really accommodate and make it move as smooth as they can. Helping out with stuff, they're not just there to film, do their job and wander off. Like if they're on site, on location, they're actually helping out with things. Tom Silva, awesome. Oh man, he's everything I hoped Tom Silva would be.
Right?
he's such a nice guy. He really is so genuine. Everything you see of him on television, on Instagram, just everything. He's such a genuine, nice, kind person, and he loves his work. He loves to jump in and help people out. He just loves carpentry. He loves building.
But they're all that way. I mean, I remember running into Richard at the Vegas a couple of years ago, and I had just met with him a few months before when I was back at at NRLA that year, and I'd gone over to their 40th anniversary party. So it was that next IBS Kitchen to Bash show, and I'm walking down, heading back to our stage, and I hear Eric. I look over, and he yelled to say hi, and I was like an 8-year-old little girl that just saw my favorite TV star. I was like, oh, he knew who I was. As stupid as that is, it was still that, that legend was saying hi. And that to me was just cool. It's even though we're all doing what we do, I think everybody, I can speak for most of the trades, the respect they have for that entire organization is there and well-deserved.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're kind of the godfathers of that industry, right? So, I mean, it's hard not to look at them with that level of respect. They've really paved the way for the educational aspect of it, which is really needed. And, you and I have both worked in that genre of education, and, it's important. We realize how important it is. It's something that you do day in and day out is trying to bring that education to people, whether they're tradesmen or homeowners. And it's important, especially when we live in a time and place where there's not people really working in that apprenticeship role, like under their father. There's not, right. You don't really have two career choices, what my dad does or what my uncle does,
right.
It's different. So it's harder, and there's not as many people that are sticking their hands in things. And it's been that way for a lot of years. And I think we all see this really great movement where more people want to learn about the trades, especially homeowners want to learn how to work on things. I find more homeowners that I work for that would like if I break them off a small section of the house and teach them how to do something. That was another fun part with This Old House project. The homeowners wanted to be involved. So the owner's mother was there. She wanted to be involved. She's lived in the house her whole life. He wanted to be involved, and they wanted to learn. So I'd teach them things. And because of that desire, they would figure it out. They'd stick their hands in the dough. They'd give it a try. And it worked out. They saved a lot of money doing it too.
Yeah, and they had the best teachers in the planet there to help walk them through it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, is a great thing. So beyond that being a legacy home for them, they have a whole nother thing now, which is, was televised, and everything was kind of put under the microscope by high grade professionals. And that's a really great thing for them too. It's amazing opportunity, I'd say, all the way around. My staff as well. So everybody really enjoyed being able to work with them, the subcontractors, my in-house staff. And they were just, top shelf. They were so kind to everybody and so respectful of all the people that were there. It was great.
Yeah. And I normally say, man, I had to make you nervous, but I know you've been doing top shelf stuff for a long time. You've got decades under your belt, but I'm sure there had to have been a little bit of a gulp. Here we go. When they first were getting ready to roll in.
Yeah. It was, I didn't know how I was going to go, and you see these guys and you hear their reputation, and, we had a few meetings beforehand, and quickly in conversation with people, if they know their business, right? Because if you know yours, they're speaking the same language. And I knew what I was in for, So when we first started filming, I was on eggshells, man. I was really nervous.
Dude, I would have been too, man. And I do a lot of TV stuff, when that camera light comes on and you're standing there with all the years of TV experience I have, I'd have gone, gulp. All right, here we go.
It was funny, but they're also great like that in a comforting sense where they make you feel really comfortable around them. Just the dialect and the dynamic of how they jump in and help out. And then it's such an easy thing when somebody's carrying wood next to you, when somebody's nailing boards next to you. There's just a camaraderie, man. It's being in the trenches with another guy. It's just, it's easy to warm up to somebody quickly that way. So we were fortunate.
And they had your best interest in mind the whole time anyway. So, this isn't some weird gotcha thing. It's, you had a good partner there. So, you were in a good spot.
Yeah. It's amazing.
That's cool.
Kevin too, the host.
I love him.
He's really great. Smart as a whip. He loves the business. Loves the building science end of things. We had some great conversations about, technique and why we do what we do, where we've kind of stolen some of our ideas from, where we've come up with a few of our own. And it's really just cool to see, the dynamics come together that way. And we're just, taken back by the whole process, really, because it was a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's jump over and talk about your Lowe's Pro stuff that you did, because that building science series, that was solid. And you know something, here's my bitch about YouTube out there. There's 100 ways to see how a project's done on YouTube, and about 90% of them are wrong in some aspect.
Yeah, you're right. So that's been a tough thing for us. Like my business partner, my brother and I have been trying really hard to develop a catalog actually of good YouTube videos to hand off to our employees so that they can watch things that we know are good, you know?
Yeah.
It's tough because you get a lot of guys that just because they have a credit card and they can make it to the box store and swipe that thing. I mean, there's no license needed to go buy tools. And I laugh every day about it. I'm like, some of this stuff is really dangerous.
Oh.
And the hoops you got to jump through to buy other things. I mean, you got to get licensed to drive a car. You got to get licensed to own a gun. But you can walk into a home improvement center store and just buy anything. You know, they don't care if you're going to cut all your fingers off or what's going to happen.
No.
I mean, you know, let's see if you can figure out how to use a table saw. That'd be interesting. You know?
But even at that, you can walk into a home improvement store, and I'll throw Home Depot, Lowe's under the bus on this, and they're good people, but there are things in that store in there that don't meet building code.
No, you're right.
I mean, it's just what it is, you know?
Yeah. I always laugh about duct tape, right? I mean, you go through the duct tape in the ductile and you're like, this is the worst thing you should possibly put here. Like anybody who puts duct tape on their ductwork is just, you know, they're trying to have a problem later on. So,
yeah, you know, it's, oh, cool. Yeah, I don't need that recirculating vent hood, even though that's not building code in my area, and you got 30 of them on the shelf. But you know, those kind of things, and it's like, come on. But that's the problem if you don't know any better. And that's where I liked what Lowe's should have done a lot more of those. I think they were onto something good there, because you're right. It's just so much that can be said out there. I mean, I was on probably 4 or 5 months ago on social media. I think it was on Facebook. And there was a dude on there building a high-end steam shower for himself. And he's one of the, I'm going to use social media influencers as a air quote here that nobody can see, but he built it out of green board and then tiled over the top of it. And I'm like, dude, this is a steam shower. And I don't care if you're putting a membrane over the top of it. It's still drywall.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, when you know how long it's going to last, it's hard. And oh goodness, for me, I really keep the sustainability aspect in mind. That's always in the forefront of my mind. And how long I can make something last for is so important to me. Being in the building industry for a long time, and my son now, who's coming up on 12, he's, you know, telling me every day, I want to be an engineer. And we have those conversations a lot about what's important as an engineer. And I tell him, you know, there's engineers we work with that, I mean, they really love to over-engineer things. And I'm like, that's the opposite of what you should be doing, son. Like,
exactly.
It's about making something last longer with less parts. Like, that's good engineering. And when we see stuff like that go together where, can you do it? Yeah. Does a lot of the country do stuff like that? Yeah. Is it good for 10 years? Yeah. Why would you want to put that level of work into something that's going to just start falling apart where it should be in the infant stage of its life, right? Like you should be able to build something like that and say, now steam showers inherently are going to be a difficult thing to put in your house anyways, right? Like you're not the YMCA locker room here. Like this is going to be tough, you know? So you really have to go through some serious provisions and considerations, but with minor tweaks to the material, you know, you can make something that could have lasted 6, 7, 8 years and turn into something that could last 25, 30 years.
Yeah. And like mine, for instance, I did a steam shower in my house. When I did mine, I did the Weedy vapor proof system behind it. And then I put large format slab porcelain over the top of it.
Awesome. Yeah.
You know, it's not going anywhere. Yeah. And if any moisture made it through a caulked seam, then guess what? I got a whole system back there that's not going to let any steam through it. But that's the process. Like you doing, I mean, you're such an expert in building science. It's the same kind of stuff. You got to have those provisions for what happens when it doesn't stop the first way in.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't live in a very forgiving climate. that's what's tough here. I mean, being on that northern eastern seaboard, hot, humid summers, and then really cold, damp winters. So that makes it tricky. We really don't get a dry spell. We don't get that forgiveness of, that Pacific climate or the desert climate. Like, It's humid and it's funky. And then we got to deal with the freeze on top of that. So, you go into the southern part of the country and you say, all right, great, it's hot and it's humid. And then it's, not so bad in the winter, but, we deal with the freeze up. So if you absorb all that humidity and then we go into the freeze up, like, you wouldn't believe, it sounds like sometimes guns going off in some of the houses I've been in, because when you get that heavy freeze and that moisture starts to crack and move through wood, it's a crazy sound, when the boards start to check and break open and move.
Yeah, it's like splitting lumber up there. We don't get that, we have our rainy season, which is that, October, November through June. And then we don't get rain for 6 months. So we get that dry heat in the summertime. You've been out here, it dries out really nice. And then the wet comes in. So we don't get that. You guys out there, that's where the problems are, is that humidity to freezing thing where it's almost like, all right, we're going from Georgia to North Dakota.
Yeah. So I think about steam showers here, and we built quite a few of them. And I'm just as worried about how they're attacked from the backside, from any gap or crack or break from, any of my index or control layers, letting humidity in behind it. And then that is stopping that vapor transfer. And then I got to build up on the backside. Another reason I would never touch green board for that reason.
Yeah, exactly.
I know in like 8 years I'd rip it apart and it would look like a fungus dish and it'd be full of black mold, and I'd have a stalactite growing out of it.
No kidding. I mean, even on mine, even though that I had that whole weedy system in there, I still put rock wool on the back of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great
just because just being careful, and it's an interior wall. So I just, it's like, all right, I'm going to throw it in here. It's just cheap insurance, but it's that same kind of thing. And, now you're in this remodeling business out there, and you've been doing this for a while, either new construction remodeling, but, building science just keeps getting, it's not that the science changes, but we keep learning more and more. And, what was just a simple house wrap years ago has now gotten into a whole new level of stuff, when you're putting in windows and doors and siding and weather resistant barriers and all the rest of the stuff out there.
Yeah. Compatible products. I mean, we got 6-7 different types of tapes out, different basis of how those things are made, between like acrylics and, butyl bases. I mean, these things don't stick together. You think about how many different types of caulkings we have, right? I mean, you get latexes and elastomerics and silicones and hybrids. And I mean, the piles of goop you can just go buy off a shelf, and then to find out later it's not compatible with what you stuck it to, or that it's, eating a hole through another product that you stick on top of it. You need a chemistry degree almost to be dealing with this stuff. And at the very least, you got to do a lot of due diligence and reading to stay on top of it. And it's tough. It is really hard to be a novice user of these products and get it right. So my hat goes off to anybody who's a weekend warrior that's making it work, because it's not an easy task. I'm doing it 60 plus hours a week, and I'm still beating my head against the wall trying to figure out how to make some things happen. So don't get discouraged if you're listening to this and you're a homeowner that's like, I don't get it. Like some of the smartest people I know don't get it.
It's tough. And my recommendation always to the DIYer is try to stick into a system and go with it.
Yes.
Whether it's Zip or whether it's DuPont or whatever you're using out there, throw out a dozen other brands on top of that. But whatever you're using, stick with that system and follow the directions, at least on your project. Know it, because where the problems occur is when you go, oh man, they were out of this tape and I got this other tape. Or, oh geez, here we go.
Or the grocery store mom mentality where they're like reading and they're like, oh, this one's 75 feet and that one's 70 feet and this one's 45 cents less. So I get an extra 5 feet for less than 30 cents. They're like, oh, please stop. They don't go together.
Oh, it's like putting people I always think of them as like languages, right? It's like, okay, I'm trying to put the German and the French people talking to each other over here. That just doesn't work good. It just doesn't work good. So you got to keep that stuff going in. But yeah, I mean, circling back though, those, the stuff that was so good on there, your flashing that you did with my buddy Ty, the how to install Windows stuff. I think those are a great resource for our DIYers out there because, you guys had to do a lot of vetting. And, I was there for that one day of shoot in Seattle to watch where, you guys had to keep it honest to what was on the shelf at the store. Mm-hmm. And that was before we ran into our problems that we had with COVID and our distribution issues that we had of getting materials in. Even then it was like, okay, what's on the shelf here and how do we make this look national?
Yeah. Yeah. That's always tough because right now with the internet, you think about, all you got to do is Google something, do a Siri search, whatever works for you. But I mean, the world's your oyster. That doesn't necessarily mean it works for where you are. That's been some of the tough things that I've done with a few of the builds. The first year I did the lab house, it was all about, can I buy this from a lumberyard right now? And that's what I wanted to do with that was, can I make a high performance build off of something I can get today that's off the shelf? And can I tweak the products rather than importing things? Because importing specialized things, I can get stuff from Japan, from Germany. They're awesome at putting those things together in a high end sense. But, I don't want that. I want to be able to do something that I can explain to builders who are trying to do this in a 9-to-5 or maybe building development houses. Like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Make minor upgrades, and you can really do a lot for a community with minor upgrades of what you can still get your hands on the shelf every single day. So, thanks for noticing that because that's a hard thing to do is just to find the stuff that's available and do your best with it. But that's like what we said about engineering. It's not about over-engineering something. It's about doing the best you can with the least amount of stuff. So can I get it today? Is it available? What's the lead time on it? Because I think that means a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's funny I love building stuff and kind of over engineering it when I'm building my own stuff, but sometimes that's not good, especially when you're coming in and throwing a bunch of lumber and an exterior wall. That's less efficient because now you've got that thermal mass there of that's not insulation in there. And that wood loves to transfer heat and cool through it. So that's not your friend outside of the structure side of it.
Yeah. Or, God forbid you're in the commercial realm and everything's steel, right? So now you're, bulk steel studs. You think about a lot of the South American countries, everybody's building out of metal studs. Metal's a great conductor. So, it has no problem transferring temperature back and forth. Mm-hmm. That's, like Joe Stiebrick says, it's why we don't make electrical wires out of wood. It doesn't really make sense,
Fair point.
Yeah. Metal's a great conductor and it's going to do that whether we like it or not. So, yeah.
That's why we cook in metal pans.
Yeah, exactly. Transfer the heat, widen it out, give it a good range and let it hold on to it. But yeah, it's tough, Eric. It is hard to find stuff at a store. It's hard to find things that work well together. But I'm a big advocate of telling people stay in a system, just like you said. Don't let the chemists, the engineers, all the people that worked on that, because believe me, if you do any level of R&D ever for any group, you'll find out how many people are involved in making sure that these product selections of saying things are compatible. A lot of research is done. I mean, sometimes a decade worth of research before they say, yeah, we're going to use this tape instead of that tape. It's a lot. It takes a lot for these companies to put a good product out on the shelf and feel great about it. And I think that's important to trust that because you also have the warranty backing when you do it. So
that's the huge part. Yeah.
Right. And I found in my experience, both doing, forensic inspections and home inspections, as well as being a builder, when I have to write reports out in the sense of a warranty failure, I've never seen a company balk at it. Every single time, if something was wrong, even a percentile wrong with their product, they step up and own it. It's not like fighting an insurance company to try to get $8 of the, $80,000 you just paid them. They want their customers to be happy, and they want to stand by their product. They want to put that information back into a good think tank and feedback loop and make their product better. It's important to them. I haven't run across one company yet that hasn't stood by their warranty and treated it well.
And that's awesome. I mean, and there's so many products out there too. And one of the things that I've learned traveling around the country is that some products are in some areas and some other products just aren't there. I mean, great example. If I'm out on the East Coast, I see a fair amount of zip. I see green and red around. Pacific Northwest, fairly rare, even though we need it badly in those winter months for framing here. And you and I have talked about this in the past, but with our rainy season we get out here, I'll drive by some mixed use building that's 6 stories of framed lumber. And by the time they're putting the roof trusses on it, the lower 2 floors of OSB are black, and then 2 weeks later they're throwing house wrap around it and going. And I'm like, man, there is a better material for this, but it's just not really that seen in our area yet. Even though it's here, not a lot of people have embraced it yet. And you see that, around the country where that would have been really smart to have in those buildings. But now they're going to have a litmus test of serious other issues there of indoor air quality issues and stuff, just because they've wrapped all that nasty mold mildew inside the building.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, you know how fast some of these developers are trying to build a house, so they're not exactly getting in there and saying, all right, let's let the place go stagnant for a while, post MEPs and running dehumidifiers and really trying to suck the moisture out of it. So yeah, you think about it like having that last little bit of moisture in a Ziploc bag or something, and, it's going to hang out in there. It's got nowhere to go. So you seal up both sides of the wall and, you create, warm, dark, and damp. That's the breeding ground for mold. That's what you need. So
it was funny. I had a job site that I was working at. I was going out to measure. It was these were $1 million homes 15 years ago in Seattle, and they were building these, developments with these nice high-end, 4,000 square foot homes in them. And I go walking in to see how far it is before I can measure for cabinets. Framing's going. I walk in the front entry door. Door's not in. It's framed. There's sheathing on there. They're doing the interior framing wrap up. Coming off the second floor balcony, it's raining so hard outside. It's a water feature. I can't walk through it. It's a 4-foot wide sheet of water over the doorway, just coming out. Because of they hadn't cut any of the bottom plates out. There was 2 inches of water down, 1.5 inches of water sitting on the floor. There's air compressors. There's the guys in there framing. There's a guy out there at the pole, out there at the temp, hitting the GFCI. He'll go, power, click. And I walk in and I'm standing in water and I hear the guy go, power, and he hit the reset. And I'm like, I am out of here. Someone's going to die.
Oh, man.
But
what an amazing experiment of human life.
It was just like Darwinism awards.
National Lampoon's movie right there.
Exactly. But at the same point, they put roofing and siding on that thing, and I can promise you there wasn't a dehumidifier that ever entered that house.
I guarantee. I mean, I've unfortunately had to write some litigation reports on class action suits and developments before from bad flashing details. And, when you got the same subs doing the same job over and over and over, believe me when I tell you that if they did it to one house, they probably did it to all of them. So, we were doing an inspection one day and somebody saw what I was doing in the house, and every, buddy out walking their dog, jogging with their kid, everything wanted to know what the heck we were doing. And I was going around, I was hitting the side of the house. It was a vinyl house, standard OSB, commodity-based home wrap around the outside of it. And I'm walking around with the blunt end of the screwdriver and just tapping the house, because you can hear when the OSB's gone dead. I mean, it's like the difference of hitting a snare drum and the bass drum, right? So it's snap, 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 bonk, bonk, and just nothing's there. And you're like, all right, that wood. So you know where to start peeling some of the vinyl off and seeing what's happening. But you know where to look for those spots anyways. It's always the roof to wall connections. It's the porch to wall connections. Like those are the spots that somebody gets the flashing job wrong. You know, they tuck the metal flashing behind, over, under, ripped, tore something, didn't rubberize it, didn't nail it, didn't tape it. And it's always that, you know, we got 3-4 different subs working and nobody's supervising it well enough, or, you know, I usually find most of the time with these guys, it's just ignorance. They're not stupid. They know it's not that they don't care. It's just nobody took the time to explain it to them. So they were showing something, they think it's right, and they're just going to keep producing it because nobody's got them in the feedback loop to tell them it's wrong. So it's like tons of houses that way that are just junk.
Well, it's like they had all the materials there. They get around, they get all the stuff together. They go to tape it up and nobody grabbed a roller.
Yeah. Yep.
Something as stupid simple as nobody grabbing a roller and hitting the pressure sensitive tape with that. And they just hand applied it, ran their hand over, went, oh, that's good enough. And that's where the failures occur.
Yeah, all the time. Minor stuff. You know, you think it's good. You think it's going to bite well. You think everything's okay. And then it's just not. But these guys don't see it fail, you know, and that's the other tough part. With not having the subcontractors, not having their employees part of that feedback loop of letting them know where the failures are and involving them. And you also have guys that are just really nomadic about their jobs. Like they're changing careers all the time. They're changing the companies they work for. So how do you involve somebody in a feedback loop that's, you know, had 19 different jobs in 25 years, you know?
Yeah. It's funny. Like there's 8 houses up for me. There's a house right now they tore it down. It's a $2 million house up there. And they tore the whole, you know, $700,000 house to put the other one in. And I go walking by and I'm like, wow, guys, would have been cool if you'd have taped the Tyvek seams on that.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, but then I can walk around the corner and there's a guy doing an addition down there and they're putting the new windows in, and his flashing and detailing is just from walking on the sidewalk, walking my dog. I'm like, that is beautiful. You know, so there's a big difference out there with, and I know you do the same thing, man. I know you're driving around and you're sitting at the stop sign of the stoplight looking over going, what the heck are they trying to do over there?
Oh, we laugh all the time. So my interior designer, Julie Molesky, she's, we always laugh because we feel like we're the the old ornery Muppets. Like always on the balcony, like just critiquing the heck out of everything. Because we'll go for a drive to go visit a new client, and it's like 8 houses will pass by that are under construction. Like, you can't believe they're doing that. Like, why? You know, and she is a designer. She sees things different than I do. I see things as a builder. She sees them as a designer, and it's funny. You know, you can't help once you know better. But that's also one of the pollutants is I had a younger guy when I was doing this old house job. So he was next door, and he's a painting contractor, and he's starting to dabble a little bit more into general contracting. Really nice guy. I want to say he was from Finland, maybe.
Oh, cool.
And he's really trying, you know. So we had a lot of dialect, Q's and A's about like, hey, should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? And he's trying to rebuild these people's porch. Absolutely funny to me sometimes what happens between somebody who like cares and wants to learn and somebody who's just going to like try to take their client's money and sort of move to that next stage. Right. So, you know, here's a guy who's really trying to make it work, trying really hard, putting the effort in. Some people don't care. You know, they're not going to ask anybody. Right. So it takes a lot of humility to ask. But, you know, the information resources are out there. But, you know, you said earlier in the show, you know, some of them are bad information. So you got to really vet it.
That's the bad part. I mean, generally, our trades are packed with people that know their stuff. They care. But you're right. It's the education side of it. You know, maybe somebody that's been out there doing windows and siding learned how to do house wrap 20 years ago and didn't do 1 minute of CEU. And what was known back then versus what is known now is two different processes. Yeah. You know, back what you did when you first learned what house wrap was is now wrong.
Yep. Yeah. I learned wrong. I learned the absolute wrong way. And I'll tell you right now, when I started wrapping houses in Tyvek, I was the absolute neatest and a perfectionist at putting Tyvek on wrong.
Same.
You never
look like a present.
Nice, clean, neat job. And it was all wrong.
Same. I wrapped the Tyvek in around the top and around the bottom before I put the window in. There was no tape. It was beautiful.
I was tucking that thing in like a military bed. The corners were tight. Everything was, wrong fasteners. Everything was wrong. Other than
staple.
From the road. Boy, you could put a bow on the front of it and it probably leaked like a sieve, but that's how I was taught to do it. And I was trying hard to make it better than what everybody else was doing, but with just bad information, Yeah. So, that was being 20, I just didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's fun now though is every year, and I know you do the same thing, you learn something a little bit new. This is such an evolving science to this. That's why it's a science. It's building science. It's evolving. It's not stagnant. We're realizing that, hey, there's a new fix for this. There's a new way to do this. And, 10 years ago, people were rarely doing blower door tests and remodels and things like that. And these are all things that are changing so much. And especially when you get into home technology and, as you know, ERV systems where you're bringing in air and makeup air. There's a lot of new stuff happening out there.
Yeah. Smart technology with being able to read that air constantly. There's some really cool stuff out that Panasonic's been working on with being able to actually read the air and trigger back to different mechanisms in the house. Yep. That's great. The fact that we're doing that, that we can test and sense air quality, it's huge. VOC output's a really big deal. And I think with, COVID happening, people really getting overly cautious and worried about trying to clean every surface in their house. Not a lot of people understand that the VOC output, that volatile organic compound output from some of these cleaning products are really horrible for your lungs, and being in the trades, I talked to a guy today and he was an amazing mentor of mine. He just had his knees done for, I think, the 4th time. He's in his early 80s, right? Still in the field working, right? Owns one of the most successful companies in our area. Really amazing guy. And another one of these encyclopedia builders. And he, he's thinking about that and he was talking to me about having his knees done. He's like, look, that's what happens. I beat on these joints. They're going to need to be redone. But he said, you know what? Really happy that my lungs still work and my heart still works. My liver still works. He's like, I've just treated those things well and I've taken care of them. I've had a job where I've been blessed where I'm in outdoor good air a lot. I'm not stuck inside buildings. I'm not inhaling bad chemicals all the time. And it's been great. So I think about that and I think about these studies that people have done on how long we're indoors and how much time we spend indoors. And it's a bulk of our life. If we're at the 78, 84 percentile of just being indoors,
yeah,
it's tough. You're breathing in a lot of bad, stagnant, funky air. And then you add other chemicals that are off-gassing. It's tough. Yeah. One of the studies I saw recently, I was reading, and just to nerd out on you for a second, if I haven't already in the show, they were found in VOC traces from paint 7 months later after the paint was done. 7 months. That's just absolutely amazing to think about some of the tight, energy efficient houses we're building and then what's happening right there. To have to go in and repaint something or, tune something up. Or you think about people using these, high VOC paints, acrylics and enamels or, God forbid it's an aerosol based, urethane or something like.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be in the air for a long time.
It is. We just had Ross Trathui on here recently and actually last week. And we were diving into that subject as well with him. But it's one of those things that, and so many people don't realize that, not using that, it's so simple, not using that kitchen vent hood when you're cooking. Yeah. It's not vented to the outside, maybe putting in that, I'm not going to use a brand here, but that plug-in air freshener that puts all that oil up. It's like you realize you're vaping inside your tight house, right? That stuff that's that orange, purple, green, yellow, that's vaping inside your house. It's just a more diluted way. Do you want to be doing that 24/7?
Yeah. Bring your baby right over there next. I don't like the smell of those dirty diapers. Vape off of the old aerosol funky smells there. But no, I mean, even simple stuff, right? Like absolutely simple things. You run in timers on the fans in your bathroom. That's a staple item in all of our homes. We don't give people an option for it. They should be in there, letting them know they should keep the door shut to their bathroom because, the CFM on that fan is not designed to vent your whole house. It's designed to vent that one room. And if you keep the door open, I'm now venting your house, not the room. So, if you want it to work right, you got to shut the door. You're going to paint your nails. This is now a conversation. I got a 14-year-old daughter. Shut the bathroom door and turn the fan on. Like, I don't want to smell your nail polish in the other room. Like,
that's VOCs you're smelling.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't need it. I don't need to get high when you paint your nails. And that's happens in a tight house. So,
well, Brown Newton's got a thing out now too. I don't know if you've caught that. Panasonic's got that great system. Brown has a new system out where you can plug in these sensors into outlets, and they're, again, air sensors, but they'll touch Bluetooth into the ERV, and it'll talk to the ERV and the vent fans in the bathroom. So if it goes, wow, we need to ventilate, it'll crank it on. Automatically, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, Panasonic's is so almost the same system. So, all of our leading fan techs are really realizing that they got to start interfacing this stuff and making it work right. And if you can piggyback that information back to an ERV, right? Have the ERV, maybe your hood, right, over top of the range and the bathroom fans all interfacing with each other. And so the next step beyond that is really getting something like a ventable skylight. So you look at like Velux has a system out where that senses indoor air quality. So that'll crack itself open and let out, it can sense carbon dioxide levels picking up. So you have, Thanksgiving's coming up, right? So, by the time this airs, it'll probably be after that. So, hey, everybody, Christmas is coming up. So
Christmas is coming up.
You're going to have a lot of people in your house. The carbon dioxide level is going to get really rich. And some of these things will now just slowly open to vent that out. And you don't end up with that funky headache later on,
Well, it ain't the turkey, folks, that's making you sleepy. It's the 15 people that are emitting carbon dioxide that's dragging you down. And remember, you and I were at that high performance trailer that we had. That was that tiny home, and it was so funny because you and I'd be in there in Vegas with that thing, and be up on stage, and you could watch the air quality in that building go bad, and all of a sudden it would automatically start venting the skylights because it's like, even though it's inside, it's trying to be smart and going, hey, we need better air in here. It's venting to itself, but it was funny.
Venting back into its own building.
Exactly. It didn't know any better because it's assuming it's exterior. Not a problem with the product. It was a problem with the air quality in the building, because I knew as soon as I saw that thing moving when we were up on stage, I'm like, oh, that's not good.
No, it was a tight building. I remember they did the blower door test, and they turned it on. The thing short circuited, basically gave them back an error code just because it had decompressed the building in about 3.5 seconds. So the only way they could get the blower to run is to crack one of the windows open so they could get circulation. But it was just that tight of a build, and that was the goal. Make this building really tight out of off-the-shelf products, and it can be done. You just got to pay attention to the detailing. But you're 100% right. It's funny, we had tours going through there, so people were walking through there constantly, and it did get funky. And God forbid someone let one rip in there because it was hanging out for a minute.
Oh, yeah, that was going to linger, shall we say? But that's good stuff. And you're going to be up here soon at the NRLA speaking, aren't you?
Yeah, so LBM Expo, that's in a couple weeks. So I'm going to do some high performance clinics there and do some Q&A, lumber yards, dealers, architects, some builders, just kind of talking about performance building. I like that show because it is a lot of lumber dealers that get there, and it's really cool to try to get some FaceTime with them and talk to them about things they should get on their shelf to kind of help out all the builders and homeowners get better usage of product.
Cool. Yeah. Tell the guys over at Curtis Lumber I said hello.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love those guys.
Yeah, they're
love
great.
those guys. So, Matt, we got to get out to break here, but what's the best way for people to find you, especially if they're in your area and they want to talk to you about doing a project?
So they can check us out on Facebook at Whitbeck Construction. I think in Instagram, we're the same handle. It's Whitbeck Construction there. Other than that, look us up on the website. It's whitbeckconstruction.com. And, all of our contact information's on there. You can find us, give us a reach. Our office manager, Stacy's really great. Be able to help you out with anything or put you in contact with any of the members in our firm that can get you answers.
Cool, brother. And yeah, I just saw your episodes running on Magnolia Network on reruns here this last week.
Oh, cool. Yeah, my son thinks it's hilarious. We were in a grocery store the other day and some guy's like, hey, I saw you on TV. And he's like, he doesn't realize that at 11 years old, he kind of gave me a good rip. He's like, yeah, Dad, you're local famous, huh?
Oh, snap. Kids bringing it. Ouch, kid. That was solid. That was a Whitbeck burn right there.
Yeah. It was kind of hard having younger me burn me.
Yeah, exactly. That apple doesn't fall far from the tree, it seems.
Oh, no, he got me.
That is awesome. Well, Matt, thanks for taking the time today, brother. I know you're super busy and trying to get stuff wrapped up for winter projects, but I appreciate you taking the time today.
But thanks for having me, man. Always really appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks again. Hey, I'm Eric G., and you've been listening to Around the House.
Somewhere unseen and undiscovered, anywhere beyond the mean. Life is a love song, let's be lovers. We're all over the radio. Take my hand, I know where to go. All over the radio with you.
Hey, it's Eric G. from Around the House. Are you planning a decking or siding project this year? If you are, you've got to check out my friends at Millboard. Millboard is a completely different kind of composite decking and cladding that enhances outdoor spaces with enduring distinction. Hand-molded from the finest oak, it realistically mimics the natural grain and color of premium hardwood. If you're looking for something that doesn't look like plastic and instead real wood, check out millboard.com. Make sure and check out that interview we did just a few weeks back. That's millboard.com.